The Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. The Zurich Classic is this week, which means it's like a bye week for anyone who covers golf because no one really cares about the team event in golf. It'll be fun to watch. We'll make some bets. There'll still be a betting show. There'll still be a DraftKings show, but the research show, not so much, right? So use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy because that's a great way to get in and actually have fun with the Zurich Classic and get a match deposit of up to $100. You can find all that info down in the description. But I still wanted to release a Sunday show. I got Brian Hooper on with me to kind of shoot the shit about whatever hot topics going on in the world of sports and in life. What do you like? Do you consume a lot of podcasts in general?
I do, yeah. That's the majority, I think, of my consumption. If you count like YouTube podcasts and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't do as many YouTube podcasts because I just usually put an earphone in, get away from my kids, and just stream it off my phone. But I do find that there's a complete lack of coverage over the weekend. So I've always wanted to have a Sunday show. And I'm always disappointed it doesn't do better.
Yeah, I'm always yesterday I was searching for extra podcasts because I ran out and it does happen. You gotta you really do need to sub to your favorite podcasters. I'm not even making a plug here for either of our shows, but if you don't do it, eventually you could run out. Because I do it in the car and I drive to Chicago a lot, which is about an hour from here. So that's a podcast, right? Back and forth. At the gym, you're listening to a podcast and a half, probably. So, and that's just audio. And I do YouTube instead of, legacy cable. I don't know what you guys have up there, Comcast down around here. I haven't watched cable TV on purpose, and I don't know how long, a decade.
I mean, does HBO count as cable? I mean, that is cable. Isn't it?
I don't count that. Yeah, I count that as just, like Disney Plus or something, all the same.
Sports would count, though.
Oh, okay. That's fair. That's fair enough. Yeah. I mean, do you think Red Zone counts? I mean,
I don't think Red Zone counts as cable, but if you were to turn on Golf Channel to watch golf or to watch I guess you could watch the Masters on the Masters app, kind of. The Masters app was terrible this year.
And the ESPN app for golf, does that count?
You can stream it off, I guess, for early round coverage, right? Or can you watch the entire tournament?
No, yeah, just not Sundays or whatever. I usually watch on the app.
No, yeah, I didn't realize that. Maybe that's a difference between the U.S. and Canada. Although I could probably find a stream on one of the apps that I have to watch Sunday coverage. Let's start with golf. Now that we're done with weekend content, I'm always looking for something on Sunday or Saturday to listen to. I figured a Sunday one would be good. It's usually when I do my golf research show, and that does pretty well. That people watch it on Sunday or on Monday morning. Although there's always just such a drop on Monday morning of podcasts that you're never at a lack of things to listen to from Monday from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. and then you're out again.
Yeah, definitely. Golf podcast, that is definitely one where I'm lacking because it probably would help because I do free ownership projections for PGA each week, and it would help if I listened to 3 or 4 hours worth of PGA podcasts because you could tell kind of who everyone's on for sure that week. But I generally don't do that.
I can see that. I remember. Do you remember Fanshare Sports?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what they did. They scanned through all of the articles and listened to all the podcasts and made their ownership projections a lot influenced on that. Here's the amount of times this guy got brought up across the industry. I just don't think that listening to 40 hours of podcasts and reading articles within a 3-day span was a super viable business plan.
It's funny you mentioned that. I looked this up a couple months ago. I wanted to do, now that my, coding skills are a little better thanks to ChatGPT. I wanted to gather data on the amount of times golfers' names were tweeted. So first name, last name, both name is what I was going to do is the 3 categories. So Matsuyama would be one, Hideki would be one, and Hideki Matsuyama would be one. So if any tweet had either of those 3 things, then it would get, a check mark. And then you can compare that to the ownership of the day, of the Thursday when the tournament drops. And, you need a healthy data set, but add that to everything else, however else you do your ownership. I do a lot with like odds and stuff. It's pretty predictive. And then using like just Twitter chatter, kind of like that same idea, but without me actually reading the tweets, just using their API. But their API is like $100 a month for like the lowest level. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm not gonna put in all this work for this. Like they don't have any specialization APIs or anything, Like I imagine like if they cared, like someone like me, I'm like, I'm not gonna be scraping your stuff. I'm doing this for one very tiny specific thing. I'm not gonna bug up your system. Can I have it for $5 a month? They probably would do that, but obviously they can't like cater to every single person's like little API scrapes. But I don't know. I bet there's a lot of predictive power there.
There might be, but I think you would have to narrow your search on the people that you hear talking about this, because Tiger Woods is going to be talked about more than anything at the Masters if you're doing Masters by random people. But that doesn't necessarily translate over to his DraftKings ownership.
Right, but the algorithm regression will figure that out on its own. So you don't need to weight Tiger any differently, because Tiger will then have a baseline that the regression will always know.
Okay, that's interesting. So like once you built this up over time, it would start to work a little bit better.
Exactly, yeah. So it'll always know Tiger's always going to have a bottom of 5% owned or something. You know what I mean? To simplify it, and then but on this week, even for Tiger, he's going to be at 12. Because he's just so much Twitter chatter, even compared to Tiger.
Interesting. I wonder if that would end up. I mean, do you think that would end up working in the long run, or do you think it might just be a lot of noise?
No, I do think there would be it would make it even more accurate. I wouldn't do it alone, probably. But yeah, with however else you build your model, which could be, odds, DFS projections, optimizer information, stuff like you could throw a whole bunch of stuff in there. And then add that as a piece on top of it. I wouldn't do it on its own. And I think it would get pretty sharp. I think it would tighten it up a little bit.
How have you been doing in DraftKings golf this year?
I haven't won once. I mean, for me, winning means you have to win one of the huge field tournaments, which is really tough to do. But yeah, I haven't won once. I do think golf is harder than it used to be, for sure, like 5 years ago.
Is that because people are better, or because so many of the live guys left and we have these complete unknowns at the top of leaderboards?
I would say it's because the tools are, there's better information out there. Like ETR has Rufus Peabody, who's for people who don't know, a professional sports bettor who moves markets, moves sports betting markets, making their projections. So like when you can get those for a relatively cheap price, it's really going to sharpen the entire DFS market. And the other ones aren't too shabby either, compared to when there was no projections, Pat, like 5 years ago. You had to make up all your own stuff from scratch.
It's funny because I'm having the best golf year that I've had ever on DraftKings. And I think that's kind of funny because more people are buying the projections, using projections. I never use projections. I just use the straight up eye test and a bit of game theory to go along with it. And just like people like having Matthew Pavon when he wins. It's like, oh, I've been tracking this guy. Obviously, his projection is not going to be good. So I feel like when there's more chaos in golf, the better it is for me.
That might be right. Yeah, I bet Rufus would probably agree.
Yeah. So like I didn't do well with the Masters. I didn't do like whenever Scheffler wins, I don't do well.
Yeah. Okay. It's definitely possible. There's also people talk about this like herd effect, that everyone, is on the same plays because all the sites are kind of projections are coalescing to kind of the same conclusions. So like you could get different there. I don't think that is totally true. I understand the concept that they could, too many people would be on the same plays. Therefore, you play different plays. That makes total sense. But I think what was happening was not enough people were on the correct plays before, and now it's getting closer to that margin. That's kind of really how I view DFS, is the old does salary matter argument that's been on Twitter, and I've had a few Twitter thread arguments with people. And do you want your salary? Do you want DraftKings to make the salaries tighter, like closer to reality, or further away? And I say, easily, you want them further away, very far away. You want them bad, and obviously bad. And the reason for that is because you could kind of think of like a salary as like an over-under sports bet. You know, if or ownership for that matter, same kind of thing tied to salary. You don't want it where it's so close that you're paying the vig, right? And then you wouldn't bet that prop anyways, the over-under. If the line is, dead on right, you're just paying the vig. Same thing with salary. Your opponent, who's a donkey, doesn't know anything about golf, can't make a mistake really if the salaries are perfect. So you want to give them as many opportunities as you can to make a mistake, and that's when salaries are off. Because if salaries are dead on perfect, then it's all just a bunch of coin flips.
I mean, I would say that some people would rather take the coin flip than trying to outsmart someone.
I mean, if you're bad, yeah, I'm talking about from like, someone with an edge point of view. You never want dead perfect salaries, because then they can't make a mistake.
I suppose, I guess it would be one of these things where if every salary was off, that would be fine. But I do find, although the Masters pricing was a little bit better this time around, but I think that had to do with Scheffler being so expensive relative to the rest of the field and them not expanding to the $5,000 range. But it's weird when there's like 2 or 3 guys that are wildly mispriced, but I think that junks it up a bit. Rather than everyone being mispriced, there's like 2 or 3. It's like, oh yeah, obviously that guy, he's $6,300 when he should be $8,000.
I mean, I would rather have everyone mispriced. If that's my 2 options, mispriced or just 2 or 3 mispriced, I definitely would rather have everyone mispriced. But if my choices are perfect pricing and 2 or 3, I'm taking 2 or 3. Okay. Because they'll screw that up too.
People will galaxy brain themselves out of playing.
Yeah, who knows? They won't know. They won't. They won't realize it. On one guy's actually really good, really mispriced, or they'll everyone will go there and just overdo it way too much. And so even though it's overpriced, now these other plays are better because no one's on them anymore.
Is there is there like a distinction for you when that gets to the point? Like if there is one obviously mispriced golfer and they're $6,700 and everyone's going to, although this hasn't happened in a really long time. I feel like it used to happen a lot more 4 or 5 years ago when the pricing was a bit more lax, that like, oh, here's the hot $6,700 guy. He's going to be owned by 17% of the field. Like, do you have a cutoff point, or is it relative to the rest of the ownership?
Well, I don't really build by hand. So when, the optimizer or sim spits out a bunch of lineups, then I start like adjusting those lineups. And it's usually not like something like that, like where that's more of like a feel gut take. It'll be like, first of all, I'll like see how wide I can get my player pool, like how many uniques I could fit in golf. And then I will pair that, bring that down to something, underneath the maximum amount of, realistic amount of uniques. Like you'll never get to 6 uniques, you'll never get to 5 uniques even, because there just won't be enough plus EV lineups with that much of variation. And then what I'll do is, if this is kind of similar to your question, is like there'll always be a bunch of like one guy, like a couple random guys in the bottom of your player pool, and they might have like high ownership, and I basically just get rid of all my like one-offs and kind of tighten up my pool to where it'll be a smaller pool, but they'll all be spread out amongst the lineups. Now, my pool will still be wider than most people's probably, but that, I mean, in my head, I'm tightening the pool and spreading the players out across instead of having like those one-off guys.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Tambo and I talk about that all the time, like when we're going through and like constructing our lineups. And I'll probably I've been playing like 50 to 75 lineups a week and building with different sets of players and then trying to figure out within those sets of players how much or how little I should have. And if there are a few people, like you said, if I have like 5, 6K guys and there's one lineup for one, three for one, two for the other, be like, all right, let's get rid of the one, move that to the two, and just try to get at least like 20% of all of these guys.
Yeah, pretty much. Or like, let's say you got, 50 players, you're playing 150 lineups, you got 50 players in your pool, and you got Cantlay in one lineup, and he's projected to be 20% owned. Just get rid of him. Like most of the field's going to have him anyways. Your one lineup is not going to, and then the funny thing is that'll be the one that wins. We've had RBX 88 on our show, and he's won at least one PGA Millie, maybe two. And he said one of his wins was just a one-off lineup completely away from his core. So like, what do I know? But like in my head, although that one lineup is probably good, your sim's telling you it's good or whatever your projections are telling you it's good. It's just I'd rather just get rid of that since you're so far under the field and add another combination of your core.
Was that the best show you guys did when RBX like showed you his gun collection?
You mean like numbers or just fun wise?
Just fun wise.
Yeah, it was fun. What I didn't realize is YouTube will like give you a strike if you show guns on your show.
So you guys got a strike?
No, apparently they just missed it on that one.
Because maybe it was because it was live. It's like, oh my god, we didn't plan for this.
Who knows? I don't think he took it down either. But yeah, like I saw sometime later. Yeah, they do not like people showing off guns on YouTube.
I'm curious about projections in golf, though, because like I said, I've never really used them. And Tambo will build out sort of like the highest projection lineup for a week. And like I'll build out like what I think that the chalkiest lineup is going to be. And they're usually pretty similar because if you know what the good plays are going in, those are probably going to be the highest projected ones. But it just feels like golf projections are more useless than almost any other sport because it's hard to factor in birdie streaks for DraftKings golf or a weather edge. I know that can go into it, but golf is hard enough to predict as it is. Whereas something like NBA projections, I would guess, are far more accurate on a week, like nightly basis than PGA would be on a round to round basis.
I could agree with that for sure. I do think you can factor in like birdie streaks and stuff through a simulation. And so like there's two simulations. There's one for building projections, and then there's one for deciding what DFS lineups you want. So these are two completely they're part of the same puzzle piece, but or they're both pieces of the puzzle, but they are different things. So like I don't know what Rufus does exactly, but I'm pretty sure he probably does a hole by hole for each player based on all sorts of metrics and data, like how would the golfer perform on this hole. And so by doing that, you're going to get birdie streak data in there.
We don't publish the projections because I don't know if it's advanced enough to do that, but the Fantasy Nationals say like betting simulator works very much the same way. It's like hole by hole. It's weighted over time, how a player performs on a certain hole. But I do think that even like just thinking about that logically, every par four that's 425 yards isn't exactly the same. And that's hard. I feel like that's the hard part to actually put in because you would have to individualize it so much that you are taking sort of a more macro type of simulation than actually digging in. And maybe that's for the better. I don't know. But I've always just found that like, it's not that I'm dubious of it because the simulator's been really good over time, much better than I've been picking. But at the same time, like when I think about it, it doesn't make the most sense to me.
I mean, it makes sense to me but like you said, the key word there was you have to put a lot into it. So yeah, you have to put wind into it too, because if you're golfing in the day or in the morning instead of afternoon, the wind could be different on that hole. So I do think you need to put the different yardage and I haven't had my own stuff for a while now, but I'm pretty sure some of the guys are putting in all the little nuanced data in there. And if But you're right. It's still a guess. All this stuff is like guesswork. But it's just like, are you guessing better than other people's?
Yeah. So I guess it boils down to that, because even if you do account for wind, what if the wind doesn't show up? Because that happens all the time too.
But you should have a variable in your wind where it won't show up sometimes, or it'll show up heavy. And then so like, what's it look like with this variable? Where the wind's heavy, where the wind's mostly like this most of the time, but there, so it'll be just a randomizer to your wind effect.
Yeah.
So each time it won't look exactly the same.
Yeah, I remember Justin was trying to explain to me how the NFL at the Run the Sims, like how he built the simulations work. And I was like, this is just, it's over my head. And just the amount that has to go in. Like, well, some of the simulations have to have the guy getting hurt on the first play of the game, because that can happen. Hey, look at Aaron Rodgers. Like when you simulate out that game, that has to be one of the outcomes. Like, how do you account for the injury randomness that could come into it? And like, how do you figure out how much to weight that? That is above my pay grade in order to figure it out. And I feel like I just have more fun, like, especially in golf. I do think it's more of an equalizer, like I mentioned, in some of the other sports, because I think it's just simply harder to project. There's more, because it's an individual sport, because the course changes every single week, and there's just human elements you're not going to know about. At least in football, they might not tell you exactly how hurt someone is, but in golf, you just don't know.
It frustrates me to know it. I don't know about you,
but how would you ever know? Like I would find it, and maybe I'm way off base with this, that Tom Brady showed up to a game hungover, whereas in golf they might be doing that.
Sure, and like, to your point, like, there's a chance you'll find out before the game that Tom Brady's hungover. There's no chance you find anything in golf. I think we've had this conversation before. Like, my thought is golf is still like a big old boys club, like old school. You don't talk about this type of stuff. Kind of like Mickey Mantle back in the old baseball days. They never mentioned that the guy was a rabid alcoholic or anything like that, because it's unbecoming, and you don't say that about somebody else, like public information. They wouldn't do that type of stuff back then. I think golf still got a little bit of that. Something's going on there, because somebody knows that the guy's wrist hurts or something, and it frustrates me. The only thing I do now is, if there is a hint the guy is hurt, I just X him out.
See, but that's backfired a bunch of times. Like Hideki at Bay Hill was like the ultimate example, because I did the same thing, and then I bet against him in the first round. He went fucking bananas.
Right, yeah. But I think the stance of Xing it out over time will pay out more than randomly guessing, like, is he really hurt? Is he really not hurt? And now, obviously, I do make some exceptions, like Hideki. He's like LeBron, basically. He's always on the injury list, but like, he's gonna play. So like, but Hideki will pull out, but like, sometimes these guys will pull out after they go +7 and they got no shot anyways. So like, that didn't really kill you. Maybe if you had him in your cash lineup, but like, so like those type of guys. But like last week, the Masters, so and it didn't really work. I X'd out what's his name? Ashke. How do you say it?
Akshay Bhatia, my guy.
Bhatia, because because he dislocated his shoulder. It ended up making the cut. But I thought, like, it's just a clear, that type of thing is like, he had to finish the week before, because he was like in the playoff, basically, and he probably had so much adrenaline and stuff like that, and it probably hurt a lot more the next day or the day after. And so, like, why risk it at all? Was my whenever I can make that kind of like logical conclusion of just like, why even risk it? I just X him out. And I should have done that with Spieth. I didn't.
See, that was the one thing that I did do, because but it wasn't necessarily due to the injury. It was just, I looked at it. I mean, it worked, but it didn't with Cantlay at the same time, because I looked at just Cantlay's numbers and Spieth's numbers. Like, these guys are fucking terrible. Like, they're either hurt or they're just bad now. One of the two. So I'm just not playing them. But I also did the same thing with Morikawa, and that backfired.
Okay, yeah, but see, I didn't see him as an injury question mark.
Who
was he? Morikawa?
No, but like, there was just. When I looked at his stats, he had lost strokes on approach in 4 of 5 tournaments, which is single-handedly by far the worst run of his career with his irons. Like, it's not even close. It was like the worst 1 month 6-week sample that he's ever had since he joined the tour by a pretty significant margin. And then in my mind, it's like, well, he's probably hurt. Like that's the only thing that could, or he lost his swing, which I suppose does happen. But that would just seem really bizarre. Like even when Thomas was bad last year, and even into this year, like his irons are still really, like the one thing that he's really good at, he's still really good at. Just the rest of his game sucks. When the one skill that you have all of a sudden goes away, it'd be like if Scheffler all of a sudden just started driving the ball 270 instead of 330. You're like, something off here.
I got you.
But
yes.
but the Cantlay thing, I thought this was really interesting. I forgot that he had joined. It's funny because Malnati joined like the Players Council and he ends up winning. Cantlay took Spieth and he took one of Spieth or Rory's spots on the Players Council. Now, Rory had his struggles last year. Spieth like had a really bad year last year. He's been bad since. But ever since Cantlay joined that council, he's been really bad. That I think like this is what I'm talking about in terms of quantifying. So we know this, but we have no effect how it's going to have on anyone. I think that's kind of sort of, I don't want to say it's the luxury of not knowing PGA reporting, but you're going to get this information, but there's no real actionable way to be correct about it. Like if you know that a kicker on the Bills has a like broken bone in his foot, but they're playing him anyway, it's like, well, maybe they won't attempt so many field goals today, or at least give him a long one because he doesn't have that juice. With Cantlay versus Malnati, they're both doing the same job. Malnati sucks, but he wins a PGA tournament. Cantlay is supposed to be one of the top 10 players on tour, and he absolutely sucks now since he joined it. So obviously it's having different effects in terms of the stress level, the time, whatever it might be. They're just thrown out of their rhythm, I guess, would be the case. And maybe you could project something like Malnati spends so much time stressing and grinding over his game because he's not that good that maybe having this distraction just kind of freed him up to go out and swing, where it's the opposite with Cantlay, where he has all these new stressors that are not a part of his regular routine. It's just kind of throwing him off. I have absolutely no idea, but these are sort of the speculation things that you start getting into once you introduce injury reporting, being hungover, a guy slept in, or Louis like, oh, my back hurts. Like, what the fuck does that mean? You might go out and shoot 9 under.
Yeah. There really is no way, I don't think, to quantify it. Well, I mean, we're also, a lot of times we're not getting that info. We're just not going to hear it. Period.
Yeah, but even if we got the info, like what would we really be able to do with it?
It depends on what it was, but I would use it aggressively. Like if it was negative, I would like, no one knows this and I'm fading Cantlay.
Okay, so
he's hungover.
It was funny. What was the weather delay? Was it at the Players? It was somewhere where it was like clear. Keith Mitchell went and tied one on because he didn't think they were coming back. Yeah. And then he came out and shot like 5 under.
Right. Yeah, he was like stumbling as he went off the stairs or whatever. Yeah,
it's weird, but it'd be the same as billiards or anything like that. It's where it is individual to individual, not team to team. Maybe this would work better in live golf because you got the teams out there and they're cohesive units out on the live tour in terms of team golf. But I think just being an individual sport where it's not tennis. It's not like you have to go out and run 10 miles and hit a ball back and forth and chase it down, stop, start, sprint. It's golf. Like I don't want to say that I know people that play better when they're drunk, but I do.
Right. Yeah. Especially golf. How about this? I mean, this is something you should do anyways, and a lot of guys do, but it's not as important as it used to be. You can look at the head-to-head markets, and if something weird, the lines shift or they might know some inside info that you don't, so maybe something like that is a way to kind of gather some info. Yeah.
But they might, but what could be someone like Rufus, like you mentioned, goes and lays a big piece on one side of the action, not knowing this information, and it would shift, and you might draw the wrong conclusion from that.
That's true, but you're also on the side of the biggest plus EV golf bettor of all time. So like over time, you're probably going to be, you're right there.
Sure. My buddy, I think Feinberg took a shot at Rufus this week for like not filling some sort of one and done contest. Jeff enjoys a Twitter feud, if you have not noticed.
I've noticed, yeah.
I think he just gets bored during the day and he's like, yeah, I need something to entertain myself. Let me do this.
I saw one. He went, I wish I could remember. I can't. He went after somebody, and then underneath the comment was, he was joking, Jeff. And he was like, yeah, well, whatever.
I think he went after Ben Ann on April Fools.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But you know what? Shout out to Jeff. He doesn't live that delete life. He's leaving it up there.
Good. Good.
Part of the appeal, I suppose. Cuss just found, I guess Facebook or Meta, I didn't realize that they had an AI tool that was like a chat bot, like a chat GPT that's on their main site. But Cust found it because he's the oldest 33-year-old in the world. So he's just on Facebook all the time. And he started to use it. And it is, I would say this is the end of like chat GPT and all of this AI.
Yeah, that's your what's it called? Your top signal
Yeah.
is
It
when
just,
Jeff's into it.
or it just might be Andercursed and like, it'll simply stop working. But it's horrible. And someone, because I put it out that he was doing this, and the first comment I got back, it's like, how long is it going to take for him to use a prompt to justify one of his insane takes? Like, it's already happened. He sent us like 5 takes right away. He's like, see, the robot agrees with me. I feel like they're too nice. The AI bots are too nice.
Yeah, they are. They are. I'm very mean to my chat GPT. Yeah, whenever it disappoints me. Hopefully it never gains full consciousness, because it will be out for revenge, based on the way I treat it.
Can you program it to make you food reservations, do you think?
No, because it can't interact with the internet right now. But you could get it to give you code to use in Python or whatever to do that. Yeah.
Interesting. So it can't, like, it won't interact. How does it pull information then? Is someone like uploading the information database into it?
Well, it can read the internet, but it can't interact with it. Like, yeah. So
So it
like
couldn't log into my Uber Eats and be like, hey,
Yeah.
I want steak from, like, hey, just order me something off Uber Eats, and it would do it for me.
And also they're updating this thing so frequently, it might have changed since the last time I've done this. But like if you put in, any Pat Mayo website and say, tell me what this says, it'll say like, I can't read that. But if you tell it, search what's Pat Mayo up to the past week, it'll like do a Google search. But most of its data is prior trained on the internet's old data. It depends they keep updating it. I think it's up to the end of 2022 or early 2023 or something. So they have it all either stored or it searches, but it can't like interact with you. You can upload CSVs now and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And it'll spit out, like, you can upload a CSV, a bunch of numbers, and say add all these together, and it'll add all together and export you an Excel sheet. It's cool.
I see. I'm messing around with it a little bit more, and I've been trying to do it that instead of like, being my own assistant a lot of the time and doing my scheduling, that could I get it to do my schedule for me and like update that and be like, hey, here's a printed list of what you're doing this month, as long as I had priors to go into it. And then I started thinking, could I use this to cut short videos from my long videos? And it turns out like that's super easy to do, as I found out.
Huh. Yeah, I know Pete uses it for stuff too. You know, I don't know. I love ChatGPT. It gets too much credit right now, and there's a lot of fear mongering going on, which I don't like about it. It's like it is nowhere near sentient, people. You don't have to worry about Terminator 2. I think we're going to be just fine. I mean, it can rapidly improve, but it's awesome. It's cool. But it's not nearly to the dangerous level, or like, it's not really taking a lot of jobs yet either. But I think eventually it will.
Now, what do you think the solution to that is when it does start to actually take jobs? Like when you can program Chat GPT to insert it into a robot person and they can be the checkout at Walmart. Like that's probably like the last level of this.
Yeah. I don't think there is a solution.
I mean, societal wise, like I don't think like that you have to stop them from doing that. But let's say that happens. Like, you and I both watch a ton of Star Trek. Like, what's the gap in between now that happening and utopian society?
Right. Yeah. This is always kind of the Luddite question of, introducing all these technologies throughout the years, and then what happens to that immediate, class of people who are working in that industry. I don't think there's a solution. Like, I mean, I know what you meant the first time. Like, I don't think the government's capable of putting together, having worked there, putting together programs to help and save these people and train them or anything like that. I think they'll try and fail, and there'll be a lot of pissed off people. But just like the Star Trek future, the benefits are like improved work productivity for everybody, cheaper goods and services. Because if you do get to that Star Trek period with a replicator and droids, and you don't have you'd have no needs anyways. So eventually, it should, just like the printing press, and that put out all sorts of scribes out of a job, and electricity put out wax makers, and cars put out horses, and all sorts of jobs, uh, over and over again, and things just get better. Generally speaking, I don't want to talk about lately, but generally speaking, for most of humanity.
Yeah, well, there's
compared to
usually a
100 years
period
ago.
too of severe downturn right after this stuff happens because everyone is scrambling to figure out what to do. And you talk about these like retraining things. The one thing I don't understand, like this isn't a zero-sum game that AI comes in. Well, that just creates jobs on the other side. Like if you're going to retrain people for jobs that don't exist anymore, that doesn't seem like a great idea.
Right. I'm not advocating for them,
but they will do it. No, I understand what you mean.
They will do that. Yeah.
Now, is that
Yeah,
just politics and optics to be like, hey, we're helping?
Yeah. Yeah, they have to do something, right? Like I'm doing something, therefore, and it costs them nothing, right? Because they just take money from you and me, and then have this worthless program. So that's my guess as to what'll happen. I'm not saying it'll fix it. I mean, I think the interesting question, who knows how to fix any of this stuff, is like it's not blue collar jobs, it's white collar jobs.
Yeah, accountants.
It's really not the grocery guy that you mentioned. It's accountants and lawyers, and these lawyers have been getting away with murder.
Well,
yeah,
law is going to be interesting. Like my wife's a lawyer, so I hope it doesn't put her out of a job.
Except her, she's a good one.
Yeah, she's a good one. But I do think that because so much of law is interpretation of law and how you can bend that, maybe the technology gets to that point where you can do it. That I do think that there are very rudimentary things, like if you are a real estate lawyer. And like you, instead of using a real estate agent, a lot of people say, just cut them out, use a lawyer and pay the lawyer to do it. It'll save you a ton of money. Well, what if you could cut out the real estate agent and the real estate lawyer and use a prompt lawyer in order to do it? Like that takes out that class of lawyer. But I do think that it's like content a lot of the same time, because I do know that there's a lot of content people that are wary of artificial intelligence coming in and producing podcasts or doing videos. I do think that's going to happen. And I do think that there's some that's going to be popular. But at the same time, I do think that there's going to be nuance to that, where it's not like it's going to take 100% of the jobs. It might just take away the bottom 25% of the people who are doing
it. Yeah, probably. I think lawyers, since it's almost like mathematical, the way you have to write law, from my limited understanding when I was working there, and having to turn in bills to a legislative reference bureau where they proofread all your work and then send you back. No, this has to be this exact way on this line. It really suits itself to ChatGPT more so than like a podcast like this.
For sure. But what I'm saying is that like once it's not so much like a writing of a bill. I think you're right. And anything that is more formulaic would be perfect for this sort of thing. But think about something like constitutional law, where you can kind of frame it any way that you want because of a comma. Why is that comma there? That you're always going to have lawyers from that sense, like a defense lawyer. It'd be hard to change that up.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I still think it could probably excel at those eventually. Like a divorce lawyer. Like why hire some dude who's going to take half your money if you could get this AI lawyer who's going to be like, listen, this is about what you're going to have to pay based on, we looked at 10 million cases similar to yours. You're not getting out of this scot-free. This is what you're going to, and you just go, okay, fine, I'll agree to it. Send it, see if they'll agree to it, and then just do it through the AI lawyers. And even that is like real. I would go, I think the level lower though is definitely like writing letters to someone who screwed you over in a business deal or something like that. A lot of civil stuff. a lot of the initial civil stuff, filing and all things like that, I think can easily be done through a lawyer that would cost you 10 grand minimum. It's going to save so much stuff, and that is a really good thing.
It is. Well, I'm trying to think like now, like let's say I use a robot accountant and it's 1/10 the price of the accountant that I use now. And my accountant, top notch and trying to find every loophole possible to save me some bucks, maybe even a little bit sleazy on that front. And I think a part of that goes into law as well. Like if you hire someone to represent you in a personal injury case, you'd hope the guy is as sleazy as possible to try to get you as much money as possible. Would you be able to program the AI to not have morals like that in a weird way?
Good question. Yeah. I think the personal injury one's a good one because they have to call and talk to the insurance. I can't remember what the position is called in the insurance, but on the insurance side, probably. And these guys are talking, over the phone for hours, debating. Like, I don't know how you could do that with AI. So, I would say in the near future, a lot of those are safe. But a lot of the lesser ones that I talked about, which is a good thing because I've said this question probably 10 times, I'm going to say it again, is, ask yourself, maybe it's different in Canada, but I'm assuming you guys have a civil court system, which is different than
but it's more capped and less egregious than it is in the United States.
But ask yourself, how many people do you know that have successfully used the civil court system to sue like a former employer or some company that ripped them off, etc.? And the answer is almost always 0 or like 1. And that's a disgrace because the civil court system's being used. It's backlogged, but it's not for you, right? It's not being used by you. It's being used by like people who have money, lawyers finagling the system, and suing people, unfairly suing people who can't really defend themselves. So
potentially what you're saying here is that, I mean, you have like your public defense attorney type of thing, that the AI robot lawyer might be way better than that person and it'd be just as cheap because it's, you're not really paying anything for it. But if you were able to set it up that way, they could get to more cases, make it more efficient, and cases could actually be heard. So you then decrease the gap. I mean, maybe that's the whole thing, like trying to decrease the gap from the lowest rung of society to the richest people in society. And that maybe technology is a way to actually do that.
Sure. Pretty much summed it up pretty well. Like think about you're 25, your employer stiffs you for a $3,000 commission check. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with that? Oh, I can sue them. Okay. How are you going to pull that off? Hire a lawyer. You know how much that's going to cost you? Your $3,000 plus another 10. Good luck. So you feel helpless because you are helpless essentially, right? And then you feel lied to, right? Like, well, when I went to school, they told me the civil court system is like for to stop those type of things, right? So you have like millions of upset young people getting screwed over on the margins. So it just to alleviate that and restore some trust in some of the institutions, which are the trust levels at an all-time low. I think most people can agree to that. That would be like a huge win for AI to allow people to actually use the civil court system as it was meant to be for cheap, kind of like how eBay does it. Like if you ordered some golf clubs and they never came on eBay, you're probably getting your refund. You know what I mean? And it's probably not even taking that long. And they handle millions and millions of transactions. But yet, when you ask the question of how many people do you know successfully use the civil court system, most people say 0. But eBay can do it better, So if the AI can do stuff like that, like, are there going to be people out of a job? Yeah, there's going to be people out of a job, but there's also a lot of good that it's gonna bring. So I mean, it's, if it affected me directly, I'd probably be a lot more angry about it. And I understand people losing their job is especially when you're a little older, it's really a bummer. So that does suck. And I wish there's some way to help those specific people. But like, I think on net, it's going to be a benefit if it doesn't get fucked up. If they don't get their hands into it and start, saying Terminator 2, Terminator 2, we need regulation. And then, only one company that is allowed to do it, and they work hand in hand with the government every step of the way. And then it just gets stifled and nothing ever great comes of it. That's also a possibility.
What's the latest on where America's at with this student loan relief? Did they actually pass that, or is that too many people got upset about it? Like, what happened there?
Well, I'm not caught up on like the last couple months of it, but yeah, they passed. It was an executive order, I believe, to get rid of a bunch of student loan debt. I think it was for. I think that one was for like everyone, and then it was denied by the courts. It's unconstitutional. So then he rewrote it, tried a different version that I think was for like government employees or something smaller, more specific. And I don't know if that one got knocked down yet. In my opinion, for him, he wants it knocked down because then he could write another one and just keep getting the new headline. They're the ones stopping me. I'm trying to get your student loan revoked. And he's not doing that great with young people to the polling anyways. So it's important to try to, bribe them.
But is that even really bribing young people? Isn't that more or less helping people in like their 30s and 40s who are still paying off these outrageous loans?
Yeah, but young people who are currently in school too would be like, oh, I'm going to get this gun. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a horrible moral hazard too, though. People will be, I'm going to go to all these college, even though I don't even care. If I don't pass, who gives a shit? It's not going to cost me any money. I'll take it next semester.
Well, that's always what I thought would be the end result of all this. Like, too many people go to college anyway. Now, if you're basically free rolling them to go to college, then more people are going to do it than ever and just treat it with very little respect. But I mean, I'm for. I mean, it sucks, especially with like the cost of shit in America to go to school is outrageous compared to basically everywhere else in the world, including here. Like, one semester at like a very good school in the US is basically 5 years of college in Canada.
Yeah. Wow. But I'm for it too, by the way. I am for.
But wouldn't it be easier to say, hey, and that you can almost like, because there's a lot of people who are like, well, I paid off my student loan. Why are they getting help? That's sort of like a crab in a bucket argument to me. Like, why are you like, it doesn't affect you anymore. It sucks that you had to do that. And that millions and millions and millions of people had to do the same thing. That just because you didn't have to do it doesn't mean you shouldn't like help people out here who might be, especially in today's day and age where, listen, it was hard to pay off a loan 20 years ago, and it was easier to do 40 years ago. Not to say that it wasn't hard, but today, that even if you just said debt relief or just allow the government to give out interest-free loans and just cancel the interest on all of it, I think that would help a ton. And then people would be like, oh, you still have to pay back the 100K, whatever it is, but you're not paying 200K for the 100K. I think that would be a better solution.
So I agree. Like that there should be some sort of like payback, like payment or whatever word you want to say, like getting rid of the loans entirely, but not the way you're talking about it. I think the colleges should pay for it.
Okay.
Because they were the ones
who's giving out the loans to begin with? It's the government, right?
Yeah, but the colleges is making the profit. The college is the one that up because like you could have went to Harvard for dirt cheap 50 years ago. Colleges weren't expensive. It was only started getting expensive, and government's the reason all this happened, but colleges where the profits went. And you could like look at like Harvard's what's that called? They're like trust fund endowments, like billions and billions of dollars. So you could easily pay for this with college funds. And they're the ones who have used this and raised and profited and took advantage of the kids without providing them with something that of value that would actually be a job in the future. So I think they're liable, maybe even criminally. But I don't feel like I should pay for it. And also like you're talking about like the guy who paid, I do feel like that is clearly wrong for that person to have paid, and then somebody else in his class decided not to pay. That's not fair. But even
also
aside,
life's not fair at the same time. Like, why do you just because you went through something and were able to do it, and this person's like basically life has been put on hold and crippled because they can't pay back student loans because they weren't able to get the.
You don't make law based on the life's not fair saying. that you say that to your kids, but you don't make law on that. You don't go, well, Pat, you go to jail forever, but this guy's getting off for the same crime because life's not fair. That doesn't mean anything. So, but also,
but didn't they almost? I mean, I guess they almost did that, like when they decriminalized or even legalized marijuana in a lot of places, and then these people were in jail for selling marijuana. They eventually like let all them out, didn't they?
I don't think not all of them, no. And also, legislators who passed those laws and are still around and now pass laws, the opposite laws, those legislators should at least resign in shame, at least. And I'm being generous. A lot of bad things should probably happen to them because you ruin people's lives for something that you clearly admit because you passed a law saying it wasn't right. Um, when I worked at the treasurer's office, we had the 529 college savings program we administered in all these states where you can put money away in an interest-free college savings account for your kids. So you still pay for it, but at least you don't pay taxes on it. And the state administers it and you get interest on it. It might not be great, but you get interest on it and you don't have to pay taxes on it. So you could save it. I would say that is completely immoral to advertise to your constituents and residents to put money away like that, have them, then you spend your money and then their classmates get it wiped away. It's ridiculous, immoral, and no, I don't agree on any level with the life's not fair. I don't think that makes any sense here. So, but I do agree that these kids were taken advantage of, and someone needs to pay. It's just not your neighbor. It's the businesses responsible, which is universities. And I don't even care if they go under. I want a lot of them to go under. I don't like universities, and I think they're a waste of time. I think they cause a lot more problems than they solve, especially culturally. And they took advantage of millions and millions of kids through these interest-free loans and jacked up prices 500% over decades, so they should pay. They should go under, sell their assets, and hopefully a lot of people stop going to college because it's bullshit. It's like a adult daycare for party animals, essentially.
I mean, that's essentially how I treated college.
Yeah, so did I. I didn't learn a fucking thing. Nothing I learned in college do I use now. And you know what? And some people do. And you know what? College should be for them. It should be like it was in the fucking 30s, for like 5% of the population or something like that. Not for 95% of the population. And all this stuff, along with the AI thing, just strengthens or pushes the divide in the class divide between people even more and more. Because a lot of these people are not going to go to college, and then they just completely have zero chance of getting in to these like the corporate sector, essentially.
I mean, how did you get into the corporate sector before colleges? Or was it just the corporate sector not big enough that we cared?
The corporate sector would hire people with high school educations.
I mean, think about the quality of a high school education now versus what it probably was 50 years ago.
Like, did you need to go to college to be a salesman? You know what I mean? But like now you do.
No, but but I mean, even a lot of like sales and whatever it is, like going to college, and then fraternities aren't big here. They're like really weird in Canada. Like only like the biggest losers go to fraternities, but it seems to be like a real thing at American colleges that you get in with a fraternity, you meet these people, and amongst those like 30 people, like someone's dad is super rich and he gets everyone jobs. Like that seems to be the reason to go to college, not the education.
I mean, I think the degree is like the first barrier to entry. So they're looking through a bunch of resumes, and it's like degree, not a degree, garbage, not a degree, garbage, degree, right? It's like the first filter process they use. If you don't have a degree, you're not getting a job at Apple. You're not getting a job at Google. You're not getting a job at any big company in downtown Chicago.
But do you think that will switch back the other way? Because you can look at it one of two ways. Like with AI and the access to information that everyone can have now, that you could be self-taught or do courses online. Like even when you're from 14 to 21, you could take university level classes, learn a bunch of stuff, how to do finance, how to do whatever. You might not have the paper degree, but you might have the ability to actually show that you are good at these things. And it's no different than for at one point, people were like, well, the only people that could sell golf clubs are golfers. Not why, but now people come to me to sell PXG clubs kind of thing because I'm on the internet and talk about golf, which I put myself on here. I taught myself about this and was able to broadcast that out. I don't think that's completely unique to just content. I could see that spilling over into other things because if everyone has a degree, what's the difference at this point?
I mean, I think that's part of why they're so upset. Not just that they have student loans, it's that the degree didn't do anything for them. Everyone has one. They didn't get a job. They were promised a job. That's why you go to college. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you that it was way too. College degrees are way too oversaturated. Like when I was growing up, I don't know, maybe for you too, the big thing was you should be a lawyer. I don't know if you remember, like, yeah.
I was told to, because I was excellent at math. They were like, you should be an engineer.
Okay. That probably would have been a good idea.
I have a lot of friends who are engineers and I have a lot of friends who are printing money because of it.
Yep. That would have been a good one. Lawyer would have been a bad one. I mean, you can always get lucky and make a ton of money being a lawyer. Don't get me wrong. But at the time, lawyers were in demand. So they were telling you be a lawyer. It just turns out it got so meta that everyone went to school to be a lawyer. And then there's just millions of out of work lawyers. I'm sure you know some. I know a bunch of guys who have law degrees who don't work in law, or they work in like the lowest form of law, like occasionally editing law books or something, and then most of them moved on to like coding or something else. So
I have found, like, I know a lot of lawyers who don't work in law, like people with law degrees and they do something else. Even though you don't work in law, unlike everything's sort of like a degree mill in a way where 95% of people have degrees. If people see that you have a law degree, regardless of the field, it always tends to reflect well on you, even if it's applying for a corporate job that is in finance, whatever it is. That degree does carry weight as legitimate to employers.
I agree, but that wasn't what we were sold as kids.
No.
We were sold as kids.
You'd be the guy,
a $300,000 job right out the gate. So they weren't promised. They weren't delivered what they were promised. And even though it helps you on your resume, you still probably have $200,000 in debt or something. Which even though now you got the $70,000 a year job, but now you're never paying down this debt. That's another thing too, is people who have a lot of college debt are usually upper class. Usually middle upper class, not super rich, because if you're super rich, your dad's just going to pay it off. But most of them are, white collar people. So it's another poke in the eye for blue collar poor people. We're going to give these billions to people who are better off than you. So, but I don't care. I think that's fine if the people who are actually responsible for it, the colleges, are paying. So yeah, storm, roll some tanks up to Harvard Yard. Point them right at the main office and go, let's get those billions, buddy. Sorry. Wouldn't it be great if Harvard went under? Like, oh, sorry, tough luck. Thomas Sowell has a great line. It's like, every disaster in American history, you could be damn sure there's a Harvard man behind it. There's always a Harvard man behind every great disaster America's, and I bet it's happening even now.
Why do you think that this Caitlin Clark thing has become weirdly polarized? And maybe it's just the sector of internet that I am on, that people are trying to start it into a culture war. I saw like even some representative like, well, women, WNBA players should be paid as much as NBA players. Like, no one with a common sense understanding of economics would ever believe that.
I mean, I agree with you. But like the women's wages thing is the same. Like, the women make 75 cents on the dollar. It's the same thing. It's not that women are getting paid less. Like, anyone with any economics background knows the reasons for it. Like, women get paid more than men up until like they're 26, 27 years old. And then a lot of them leave the workforce because they have kids. And then there's like some smaller like data that shows it might be also because women are less likely to ask for a raise. But when you compare apples to apples, it's like almost identical wages. So it's the same thing in argument there, except in sports it's so obvious to see. It's because no one goes to the games and you can't afford to pay them that much, and the sponsorships aren't as much.
But
I
the
think,
weird thing is Clark ended up getting, I think it was like 20 something million bucks. The argument isn't that all women basketball players, like they frame it, is that there should be equal pay. Women basketball players should be paid as much as the men. The actual argument is that she is so big in this sport that she should make as much as the men, which is kind of true because she's like the only star that they have.
right.
It's no different than when like Tiger came onto the scene and golfers were paid X amount. And then Tiger comes in, then all of a sudden the purses are 5X 2 years later for everyone. Like it almost has to be the same sort of thing where she is such a star that it does increase the ratings. People buy the merchandise, people go to the games, people have interest. Then all of a sudden people will get paid more. At least I would think.
And she's going to get paid more, but just not through her WNBA salary.
Yeah.
Which I think is totally fine. Why are we arguing about this? Why was Jeremy Lin popular?
I mean, I think there was a confluence of circumstances of why Jeremy Lin was super popular. Underdog story, Asian dude, New York City. Like that trifecta was just unmatched.
Why is Caitlin Clark popular?
She's female Steph Curry.
And white.
Yeah.
Come on. Let's be honest. It's because she's white, just like Jeremy Lin was Asian, and she's kind of an underdog by default, just like Jeremy Lin was. Because she's white. And so I think that's part of it. I think that's why people, I mean, I don't care, like I hope she does well or whatever. Like it's not a big deal in my life. I have no like strong opinions on any of it, but like, I mean, I think it's quite clearly it's because she's good and she's white. And she could shoot too. Like, I think that's kind of, because you can't really be like a dunker, right, in women's NBA. Like, I mean, not like someone who can compete in the NBA dunk contest, right? Like, they're never going to be that flashy. So really the flashiest thing you could do is be a sharpshooter.
I mean, that tracks. It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. So she's like the flashiest thing they could be. She's white. She's, Iowa kind of underdog. So yeah, it all makes sense to me.
Do you think that her star power translates over to professional basketball, or do you think that she was enhanced because it was college basketball and people, even if it is the women's game, like women's college basketball is already more popular than the WNBA was?
Like the Gonzaga players of the past kind of
yeah, like they're enhanced because they go to these schools and that they have these national TV contracts and people are familiar with the school. So when Iowa is playing USC or LSU, like there's just built-in homerism for all these schools in different pockets of the country anyway. So you're going to pay attention. Like, I don't know how many people really even knew that Indiana's team was called the Fever.
I don't. Yeah, that's right. She got taken 1 overall by Indiana.
Yeah, even if she wasn't the best player, it would be insane not to take her first overall. Just on the money you would make.
Yeah, that seems like a good landing spot for her, actually. Indiana, small market, but still.
Like, does not market too far. Do you think that market size matters in the WNBA?
That's a good point. Yeah,
like for home attendance, sure. But if you're going to try to sell this nationally, and I think this is even the same case in the NBA to an extent. Like if you're awesome in LA or New York, I think that can bump you up to a different level. But no one's like, man, no one's ever heard of this Jokic guy because he plays in Colorado.
Yeah, no, I think that tracks. I have kind of a hot take. I think we need to bring back the Billie Jean King
Battle of the Sexes.
Battle of the Sexes in all sports, but not a 60-year-old man who's, hungover and smokes 3 packs of cigarettes and probably had a gambling debt and lost that match on purpose. But yeah, I think we need to bring it back. Whatever you want to do, 3-on-3, NBA, I don't care. Even MMA, just for 1 fight or 2 fights, that's it. Just enough to shut these fucking people up. Just enough to shut these fucking people up, and then go back to like, there's a reason we have the WNBA and the NBA, and we can celebrate, Caitlin Clark as a great WNBA player. But that's why no one's going to the games.
I thought the same thing would happen with women's hockey, but they just started a professional women's hockey league. Maybe because it's Canada and people just like hockey. The women's game's like selling out big arenas.
Oh yeah,
I was shocked.
Good. Good. Yeah. And I don't want, retired NBA guys joining their league.
No.
I think there's a chance that's where this goes. So like, but there's a lot of people who think like Serena Williams would have been like a top 5 tennis player in her prime.
Like in the men's game?
Yeah. There's a lot of people.
Didn't she kind of dispel that statement?
She's played around with it a little bit.
Yeah, but I feel like she's always been sort of on team like, yeah, no.
Yeah, no, but then she sometimes talks shit and like she would do well in there. Because when she first got in there, they would challenge all the lower 500 ranked men.
And they were probably good against those guys.
No, they still lost.
Yeah.
It's on ESPN. I think the story's still on ESPN. It's probably about 20 years old. You can Google Serena or Venus. I can't remember which one. Plays top 500 ranked guy. But either way, who knows what they would beat? I want to see it. I think it'd be good. I think it'd be in this like polarizing times. I think it would be excellent TV. It would get tons of ratings. And I think we need to do it a whole bunch in a lot of different sports. I'm semi-joking about MMA, but I think that would be like the Chris said, because I always get in arguments with the MMA guys about like what fighter would beat Amanda Nunes would beat what fighter, and vice versa. And I think every single MMA fighter would beat, real MMA fighter would beat her.
Well, like, if you just take like, let's say the UFC, and what's the there's a 125 or 135. What's straw weight in female MMA?
I don't know the weights. I think 125, but I don't know.
So you get 125 to 130, whatever it is. That's what flyweight for the men.
Yeah, I could look actually.
Yeah, like the size discrepancy, but just putting those two people next to each other would be massive. Even though
straw weight's
even though the men seem like they're really little dudes, they aren't.
Right. Like straw weight's 115, but I think even she's competing like, I mean, do they even have women's heavyweight?
I think that I mean, I'm the wrong person to ask. I don't follow.
She's 130. She's 134.
Okay. So she probably cuts, 20 pounds?
Well, that might be her fight weight.
Oh, yeah.
134. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I don't think you'd ever get anyone to sanction that. But hey, there are people doing the steroid Olympics right now. Maybe you just get some rich dude who pays them all a bunch of money to do it.
I like that idea too.
Sell it on pay-per-view. Try to make a buck. Remember when Bleacher Report used to have a whole bunch of pay-per-view events that I don't think anyone ever bought? Like the first match between Tiger and Phil.
Oh, that was pay-per-view?
Yeah, you had to buy it on Bleacher Report and stream it.
Oh my God, that site's still around, huh?
That I don't know. I can't confirm that, but I know that then it was. I just remember winning a bunch of money on Phil.
Huh. That site sucked.
Do you have do you think golf is dead after? Because people are complaining about the Masters ratings and like this and that. And I forget who it was. I think it was actually a live account who put it out. Like they were talking about why. And obviously it's not the reason, but I thought it was a good hypothesis that people are just like, it was more of a live defense, but people are sick of hearing about PGA versus live. They just want to see people play golf.
I kind of think I like the PGA versus live rivalry.
I do, but I don't think enough people like live outkicks its coverage in terms of coverage versus how many people actually care about live.
Yeah, based on their viewership numbers for sure.
Yeah, no, apparently 3 billion people a week watch on something called the Cinnamon app, according to them.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Like they get 20,000 people on YouTube. Some of their golf tournaments are lower rated than some of my shows on YouTube.
I believe
that's dead serious.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. I thought it was subsidized by, wealthy Saudis, but apparently they're getting billions of views, so they don't need it. I don't know. I kind of like the two leagues idea. I'm in the minority, I think. I think it's fun. I think they should have more contests. Now that like the dust is kind of settled. I mean, I don't know if Rory's going over there. I guess the dust hasn't settled, but like
Rory's not going.
No, yeah, I mean, but I think it'll be fun to have. I mean, it's annoying because like, that Malnati is not good, like But if you didn't know, like if you didn't have all these other golfers, like they didn't exist, you wouldn't even know it. And PGA would be the exact same product, like it's only because they took away, 20, 30 good golfers that you're like, this guy wouldn't be winning right now
Yeah, but
if Liv didn't
I see.
exist.
I kind of disagree with that. I mean, I think there are certain cases where that happens, but even to look at the tournament that Malnati won, like, do you really think Dustin was going to play? No.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't want to take away credit from him. I mean, I just picked a name out of my head that won recently.
But no,
But
people
just,
talk about like some of these tournaments are watered down, but it's
yeah.
not like these live guys who are like the big names anyway. We're playing in these watered down tournaments to begin with.
Some of them probably would be.
Sure, you get
But
2 or 3 of them in there.
you get two or three.
Would that change everything? I don't think so. Like,
Kind of.
are people tuning into the Valspar because Bubba played, DJ played, and Rom played? No. The only time the Valspar ratings have ever been good is when Spieth has been in the final group.
It would definitely change DFS.
Sure, but that's
Big
not
time.
I mean, it would affect us in that way.
Well, maybe a lot of the viewers are DFS people, and then now they don't care. I mean, I doubt we're that big, but like definitely, it's if you put Patrick Reed and Dustin Johnson and one other guy, they're getting like a huge chunk of that ownership now if they're in that tournament. So it totally changes the viewing experience for DFS wise. But yeah, real life, yeah, does it matter that Patrick Reed, he's not going to make the cut 25% of the time, anyways? Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because like for me, my main argument from the beginning was like, you still watch college football. You don't care that college football's quality is way below that of the NFL. Some people like college football even more. We can have 2 separate products. So I still think that I don't know, maybe I'm wrong and PGA folds or something or Live gives up. But I think it's fine to have 2 separate projects. One more like European based too. And I just wish they would work together a little more and have some fun tournaments.
Yeah, see, I would agree with you there. And maybe once it's established a little bit more, that will end up being the case. That you'll have like a Ryder Cup every single year that's PGA versus Live. I think that would be a lot of fun. But most people just like still are viscerally anti-Live. And I think it comes from like there's a good part about the disruption of Live that hopefully leads to better changes on the PGA Tour. The problem with the tour right now is they have to compete with unlimited money on the other side, and they're actually trying to make money and not fold. And it's hard to do when the person that you're going against is literally lighting billions of dollars on fire. Like they don't care.
That's true. Yeah, it's not really a fair fight. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, the PGA has kind of screwed over players a decent amount, I feel like, over the years. They should have paid them a little more. If the people care about it so much, then the ratings should be up because they should be desperately watching every minute to support this PGA product that they love so much.
Yeah, I don't think it's that they love the PGA product so much. They just want to see all the best players in one place. Like and I think this is mainly an American thing at the same time because it's no different than MLS versus European soccer. Right. That Americans care about World Cup when the best are playing the best, but when you have the 8th best soccer league in the world in your home country, they're like, eh. But the moment Messi comes over, it's like, well, we know this guy is awesome. We'll watch him. But everyone else sucks, so we're not going to watch.
That's true. But I think they like the comparison. Why not like the Premier League and La Liga? Like those are 2 separate leagues, and then they play.
I think that's more of a European thing, though. Like, and I think the Premiership to Americans has been sold as, I mean, it says Premier right in the name, so it's got to be the best. But I think you can make a pretty good argument for the Spanish league being better. Sometimes the German league is better than the Premiership. But that's, I mean, the English-speaking country, it's very translatable over with the commentary and everything like that. And NBC picks it up and props it up as being the best league in the world when sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, whatever it might be. But people at least feel like it's so much better than the MLS that they're like, oh, this must be the best kind of thing.
I mean, I don't think it's a uniquely American problem because or even a problem in America rather, is college football. Because not even like college football in the NFL, like college football within itself, like there's different conferences that are differing strengths, and like people still watch all the different conferences for various different reasons. So I still think in America it can succeed. I think they're just pissed off.
Maybe, but how much of college sports in general, be it football, basketball, whatever, is just regional and homerism from people who went to these schools? Like I know people like it doesn't make sense to me because maybe I'm not American, but I have a friend in Alabama who didn't go to Alabama, but he's like, oh, he watches every Alabama football game. Like he's a big Alabama guy. Like you didn't even go to the school. Why do you care? But he does.
I mean, I would argue that's the same thing with the La Liga and Bundesliga and everything. They like them because they're their local teams.
Sure, but it seems like there's more attachment to these college teams, maybe because they exist in like butt nowhere, where there aren't professional teams, and they just are sort of the fill-in for the professional team. But just I always just found it really weird.
I do too a little bit, and also though people do actually go to those colleges. That changes. That changes.
Sure, I would get it. Like I went to this college, I'm going to support this college.
Yeah.
I had a great time there. I paid them a bunch of money. Hey, it's like school spirit type thing. You have this lineage with people. But if you didn't go to that college, I couldn't in a million years figure out why you would ever just root for a random college.
I 100% agree. I will not defend that position because I don't hold it. And I've been making fun of people about that for 20, 30 years. My buddies like love Duke or something. It's like, you didn't even go to Duke. Why do you care about this 19-year-old kid at all?
Yeah, I find it strange. So one of the main reasons that I wanted to have you on, we'll end with this, was it's been, 10 years since Black Friday in poker? Right around that?
Oh, God, 2011.
So it's been 14 years, 13 years. How much of an impact do you think that had on where we sit right now in sports betting? And why has sports betting DFS been so much more successful legislatively than poker was?
I think it's very big because within that legislation, they carved out the fantasy sports language for the NFL lobby. They didn't want any of this anti-gambling, online gambling stuff to affect fantasy football. And so they got that carved out in the law years ago. And that is why I know like that's why Taylor Cabey started one of the original daily fantasy sites. What was it?
Draft Day?
What was his Draft Day?
Love Draft Day.
Because of the language in that bill. He goes, oh wow, we could do this idea. And maybe there was another site or two at the time, but yeah, those early sites were definitely straight because of that legislation. So the way it worked too is I think that gave them enough cover legally to then work the state angle and get legalized state by state over time, where poker never had that opportunity because the federal government was so hostile to it ever since the 2006 UIEGA law, which made it so credit cards and banking couldn't do certain online transactions. So because of that, they went the gray market, black market, gray market, whatever you want to call it, angle, and just get as much money as they could, where they should have, in my opinion, tried to play the game more. And maybe like buy a failing casino in Illinois, buy a failing casino in New York or something, somewhere where they have legalized gambling and you have a shot at kind of like getting the legislators' ear. Because once you have a piece of property that the legislators like get tax dollars directly from and have a relationship from, they hire their constituents to work there. Except a lot of the gambling money goes straight to education, in their head anyways. That's not really how it works, but let's not talk about that. So like, this is just one idea off the top of my head. Like they had the money at the time and they spend it all on advertising too. They could have spent that more on lobbying, and trying to play the game at all. I think they were legislatively and politically naive, or ignorant. I'm not trying to insult them. A lot of them were just poker players who started a site, like Howard Lederer and stuff. And I don't think they knew what they were doing. They were in over their head. And so once they went in this gray black market area, the federal government was just biding their time, building up a case to eventually seize all the sites, which is what they did in, I think, April in 2011, which was crazy when I woke up that day, just like every other poker player. And you go to the site and it's just, this website has been seized by the federal government. And I was just like, oh my God.
Did you end up getting money back ever out of it?
Oh, I think I got one site, not much. Their numbers were wrong because like you had like I probably had like different accounts, like back then you would make a long time. Like I started playing online poker in the 90s, right? So like you would have like you would have a name you started when you were 19. And then you like don't play poker for 2 years or something, and then you're like, I can't remember this. I'm just gonna start a new account, and it was not, it's not nothing wrong with that, I don't think. But like they'd be like, your name doesn't match up with this account, your info doesn't match up with this account. So like two of the three I didn't get a penny back, and like one I got like a couple grand back or something, not much. But a lot of guys got screwed over. So yeah, that sucked. But like mainly the problem was I wasn't prepared for a new career, which is my own fault. But so I was kind of up a creek without a paddle, and I had a lot of bills, right? Like I had a house, a nice car, like any dumb young kid who runs into a little bit of money. So, and this was even back then, I was paying like 13 grand a month was my nut. Something like that. And I, I didn't have any kids or anything. So like I was just paying way too much money. And then when your income goes to zero immediately and you have no other options, it sucks pretty bad.
So I got this question because I solicited some questions. It kind of goes hand in hand with this. Someone asked me and you about it. So I guess you kind of answered like what you're doing now because of it. But it's like, what would be your full-time job? If your full-time job was podcasting about other than sports, what would it be about? But like, what if I'm trying to think like, if this wasn't my job, what would I do? And I actually have no idea what the answer would be to it. But
I tried to work in sport. I tried to work in sports. So I worked in minor league baseball for like 3 years, and I didn't like it at all. So I think I would have just gotten an adjacent job, something similar, but more like just some company that, whatever works in facilities management or something, or I don't know, maybe runs stadiums, but like I don't have to like actually be affiliated with the team or something that I could actually, that I had an educational background plus experience getting, because you're not just going to get hired anywhere. You have to have some experience. So something like that, and then who knows where I would have ended up later on. I hated bosses. I hate having bosses with a passion. And not that I've had some bad ones, but not, I just like, I don't know. I just like I just want to go like, you're an idiot. This is a stupid idea. Like I would not do it this way. So like I hope I would have like maybe tried a YouTube channel or something, or my own business. I assume I probably would have, but who knows?
It's funny looking at it now that I have kids, I would own a whole bunch of indoor playgrounds is what I would do. Like those have to print money. I don't know what the insurance costs are for them. I assume they're very high because you're dealing with kids, but there's like liability waivers that you have to sign anyway. Basically, you just buy all this secondhand equipment, set it up inside, and charge people $25 a pop for an hour walking in. And they're full, especially in places with not the best climates, where I'm sure they don't do well during the summer here. But from the middle of September through the middle of April, like they're packed. And there's no real overhead outside of like you pay the equipment off, boom. It's not like you're getting new equipment all the time. You pay minimum wage staff to be there. You pay for your space, and then you pay for insurance. Once you recoup that, which I assume you probably would in the first year, it's like free money.
I could see that. I wouldn't want to do it in the city because it's just right now it's just too chaotic. But I could see in some like nice suburb doing that. That does bring me back out. I had an idea before these were popular with like my brother I was talking about years ago, like pop-up Halloween stores, right? That sell Halloween costumes, but you only open them, a month or two before Halloween. And I thought like that could be pretty awesome. Like you just really work for like 2-3 months out of the year. and then you store all your inventory you don't sell because you're going to sell it the next year. And you just you just open 10 stores, around wherever. And you're just driving in between the stores each day, making sure everything's running all right. You're working hard for 2 months out of the year, and then you go to Florida for the for the rest of the 10 months.
Would it be viable? Like, I'm trying to think about how the space rental would work with something like that. Would you do a short-term lease? Would you have to get into a complete lease for that, pay it all year round, and then it's just empty space? How would that work?
I think, first of all, I have no idea, but I won't let that stop me from answering. I think now, ironically, would be even better time to do it because there's a ton of empty businesses, either due to the economy or the internet or high rental prices and real estate's really expensive right now. Whatever the reasoning is, there's empty spaces everywhere around Chicago and the Chicagoland area. So I bet now would be a good time to find some primo locations for some good short-term leases. But clearly, if you can't get short-term leases, this business idea would not be viable. And people do it now. People do it now. So I'm not sure you would want to do it now. But that was one I did have many years ago.
What sport would you say you watch the most of outside of like Red Zone on Sundays?
MMA.
Really? More than golf?
Well, actually, it's kind of tough because golf's on 4 days a week. So, yeah, I don't know. Probably golf then, yeah, if you count that.
So I think one of the reasons that people are disenfranchised with golf a lot of the time is because the coverage is just so horrendous. Like, can you think of a way to improve it? That's like realistic at this point. Because I know that seeing every shot of every player is something that we all want. It's not close at the moment for the PGA Tour. It is on Live, which is nice to see. But for the PGA Tour, I think that's a bit more difficult. Like, is there just anything that they can do? Is it acknowledged that there's a cut happening? Anything like that?
I mean, I agree with all that. Like, could I come up with an idea? Maybe, but like, maybe this is a good thing that Live is happening. It'll light a fire under them. You'd think it would light a fire underneath them to finally give us, because like I go to this. I know you agree with me. Nothing frustrates me more. You go to the gym Thursday, 9 a.m. The TV's on. They got golf on the TV. Oh, this is great. I'm going to do the elliptical. Oh, it's a rerun of the Euro League. Like, what are you doing, PGA Channel? Put on your main product. It just makes zero sense.
It has to be a rights provision, but I don't care. Like, they need to figure that out. Like, it's funny because you mentioned that we're recording this on a Friday. On my guide, it said they were replaying round one of the Heritage when I went to go get on the treadmill. So I just turned it on. It's like, I'll just kind of catch up on what happened yesterday. I turned it on. They were showing live coverage from Punta Cana. I was like, whoa, where did this come from? This is great. Like, it made me genuinely excited that they were showing golf that was actually happening in the moment live that I have money on. Like, this is great. Like, just sign me up for this all the time.
To be shocked by that is just another example of why Live happened, right? Like, part of this is PGA's fault. We all have to acknowledge that. Yeah. Elon had this line the other day I saw where he was actually, I think it was from decades ago, but it was an Elon. He was talking about, I'm going to paraphrase. I can't remember what exact, but he says like a lot of businesses, they're good at making small incremental increases, but they're not good at innovating. And I think that's kind of what PGA is. Their leadership and the way they've been is just really slow incremental changes and no innovation whatsoever. Like, I mean, I can't even name what TrackMan, maybe, I don't know, some major innovation they've done. And, maybe they'll what's that guy's name? Monahan or whatever.
He has to go.
You got to bring in someone who's going to innovate.
But this is also, I think this happens with almost every league in general, sports league. Hey, we're making so much money. Why would we change anything? And I think the NFL has weirdly been the most proactive in changing its sport over time to try to get out ahead of things and try to make it better for whatever reason, try to make it safer, try to make it more like doing the Amazon deal, the first of anyone, being like, hey, we'll take money. We'll make even more money. This is great. And we can innovate this way and get direct to consumer, whatever it might be, that they seem to be on the forefront and willing to try out things. And they're the most profitable of all these leagues, which is kind of weird to think about at the same time. But you also have golf, which just think about who cares about golf, who likes golf, and who is involved with golf. It's like rich old white dudes, and like they don't want to innovate; they want to keep things exactly the same. But now
That's
it's
true.
failing.
That's true. But even old rich white guys want to see the 9 a.m. golf on a Thursday. Like everyone knows this, and they still couldn't even do that, you know. So
Like
there's a line there between keeping it the status quo and like it doing some obvious changes.
like here is an obvious change that they can do. Because before I was like, oh yeah, like I said, you get cameras on everyone, then you can have an on demand. Maybe that's for the future. Just a very practical, simple solution which they could implement tomorrow at the course. You work in conjunction with ESPN Plus, who has its early round coverage and the separate feeds. Now, I would love for it to be on Golf Channel. It's not. But you just set up a camera at 17 and 18, full cameras set at 17 and 18, full cameras at 8 and 9. If you ever wanted to have the cut channel, there it is.
Fine.
It's
Works
just a
for me.
reallocation of like 3 cameras at the course and a feed on ESPN.
Have you seen these surfer guys? I've only seen it a couple times. They record themselves surfing from the beach, and they hold. I'm assuming they hold something, or they have something on their shorts or something that has some sort of connection to the GoPro that follows and tracks them wherever they surf.
So they do this on the European tour for ShotLink data. They put it on the caddy.
There you go. Fine, perfect. Right? Why not? I mean, you don't even need an announcer. Just give me that, and I'll be fine. You know, and it'd be nice to bring in like you can't find a guy who wants to be a PGA announcer for $20 an hour. I guarantee you could.
Listen, I'm actually in talks with doing some of the like PGA Tour live announcing. Pays good money.
Oh yeah. I bet they do. I'm just saying. I'm sure you could find somebody if you really wanted to.
You could pay me to do it. Give me the feed. I'll run it on Mayo Media Network. If you give me the rights to do it, I'll do it for free.
There you go.
I mean, it's no different with the rise of the NBA in terms of its popularity, especially online, kind of goes back 15 or so years now when they were the first league to be like, you know what? You put our clips on YouTube, our copyright, we don't care. Make as much fun videos, content as you want with our stuff. It's only going to benefit us. And the other places still haven't figured out why that was successful.
Yep. Video games, a lot of video game companies do that too, which was really smart, letting the kids play the games that
free
people see that.
advertising.
Free advertising. Yep. Yeah.
It's nuts. Anyway, Brian, thanks for doing this. Tell everyone where they can find all of your DFS tools, underdog tools, everything like that.
All that's at my website, brick75.com, bric75.com. My Twitter handle's my name, Brian Hooper __. And we'll do podcast lulls with Peter Overzet Thursdays on his YouTube channel, 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Real America time. Peter Overzet's channel.
You can subscribe to that. I've been on tons of times. Obviously, Brian will be
That's right.
back. You can catch Brian on with. Are you still talking about like random Star Wars with Davis?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's been busy the last couple of weeks, but yeah.
That's the one thing we didn't get to talk about. I gotta go, and I know you gotta go, but people are way too into the NFL draft. Like I get, and maybe it's because I don't care that much that I get real secondhand embarrassment from it.
I used to be a big draft guy when I was younger, and I just do not care.
Yeah, it seems like something for 10-year-olds.
I mean, kind of is, but yeah. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of sports is for 10-year-olds.
I know, but like this one in particular, like it's a real, like I'm smarter than people who work in the league. Like it's a lot of that energy coming from it. Now, if you're trying to find bets and everything like that, I like that. And I think there are certain people that are really good at it and breaking down the analysis, but like not every third person is smarter than every NFL scout. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
Just a lot of takes being thrown around. And if you're trying to do that for betting purposes, that I understand, for be like, no, like there's no monetary upside for me doing this. It's just, I'm going to be right about it. And I've spent the last 100 hours breaking down film on this one guy. I obviously understand there's a market for it, but leave that to the people who are really good at it. Not everyone needs to be a draft expert on this.
Yeah. I mean, betting wise too, though, I like it because there's no gust of wind like in golf. Like
no, it's an information market.
Right. It's an information market.
And someone
so
knows the answer.
Someone knows the answers. You could make a lot of money.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Go to Underdog Fantasy right now. Use code Mayo. Get yourself a $100 match deposit. Ran well on, hit a 6X, I think, on Thursday. Shane Lowry lost 3 strokes putting on Friday, so that one didn't end up being a winner. But hey, we're going back to it. Fantasy National has new tools as well for the Pick'em game, along with the leaderboard app that's brand new that everyone should be using. Kind of to what Brian said, Jay, just show me what people are doing on the course. Well, this app will show you what everyone's doing on the course. You don't have to click on each individual guy in order to be able to do it. That's the throw it for being a member at fantasynational.com. So go check that out. Get 20% off fantasynational.com/Mayo. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll have NFL draft. I'm doing the mock draft on Tuesday with people who know. I don't know. So they're going to tell me and we're going to vote on it. I'll have Jeff, I believe, on Monday for team bets and then DraftKings betting on Wednesday with a very special guest. Who it is, I have no idea yet. But Tambo is off this week, but we'll be covering Zurich. I promise. It's just we're not doing comprehensive Zurich stuff this week. Smash like, sub to the channel while you're here. And we'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!